Organic farming is becoming more and more important. We are more aware of what lies behind the chemical means of cultivation. Farmers are switching to organic farming to improve their crops. Ethnobotanical research has shown that the use of nettle slurry as a fertilizer in organic farming for horticultural crops is becoming more and more popular. Nettle manure is a nitrogenous stimulator of the growth of green vegetables mass. So find out how to make nettle slurry and how to use it correctly. Nettle is a medicinal plant with high nutritional value, but is considered a weed in the garden and is exterminated because of its expansiveness. Once commonly used in folk medicine, it has health-promoting properties used to alleviate many diseases. Currently, it is most often known as herbal tea. However, this plant is also an excellent fertilizer famous for its high nitrogen content to stimulate the growth of vegetables. If we make liquid manure, young nettles, not yet blooming, are the most valuable. Remember not to use nettles with seeds and roots, as even in fermented slurry they can survive and spread over the bed. As the nettle stings, pick it up preferably in rubber gloves. Use a plastic barrel or bucket for the liquid manure, do not use metal containers. 1 kilogram of nettle should be poured with 10 liters of water. Do not fill the container to the brim, as the liquid will generate gas and bubble during fermentation. Cover the containers so that fly larvae and other insects do not infest. A barrel with a twisted lid will work best. You should open the container every day, or at least several times a week, and mix the liquid, because oxygen is needed for the fermentation process to proceed properly. The slurry has a sharp, unpleasant smell. It is a good idea to place the container further in the garden. Use rubber gloves and old clothes while watering. The container must also be in the shade so that the liquid manure does not heat up. The slurry will be ready for 14 to 20 days, when it stops foaming and its color is dark. If you want to neutralize the unpleasant smell of the liquid manure, add some basalt flour to it, which will also strengthen the effect of the product as a fertilizer. What vegetables is nettle slurry suitable for? This slurry is primarily nitrogen-rich, with less phosphorus, magnesium, calcium, and iron. These are the ingredients that condition the proper growth of plants. Hungry vegetables will not grow, so you need to feed them properly. The content of nitrogen in the nettle slurry is 0.032%, potassium 0.019%, and phosphorus 0.010%. Nitrogen fertilization increases the mass of the green plant, i.e. leaves. Therefore, it is best to use this fertilizer to water vegetables in the phase of green mass growth. Then, during the flowering phase, it is worth watering with a fertilizer that will stimulate flowering and fruiting, i.e. one that contains more potassium than nitrogen, such as comfort manure. The vegetables that need to produce a strong bush and those intended for consumption on leaves, such as cabbage, broccoli, and cauliflower or celery, and in the initial phase, tomatoes and cucumbers, will be grateful for the nettle slurry. Nettle is great for the growth of root vegetables due to the high content of zinc, silicon, copper, manganese, and sodium, but these vegetables tend to accumulate harmful nitrates. Such vegetables also include radishes, spinach, carrots, onions, garlic, beans, and peas. So we should water these vegetables in moderation with nettle slurry, while beans and peas as well as other legumes themselves fix nitrogen from the air. Nettle manure can also be used to supply fruit trees, shrubs, conifers, annual flowers, and perennials. Before using the liquid manure, it is necessary to dilute it with water in the ratio of 1 part of the ready-made liquid manure to 10 parts of water. If you don't dilute it, you can burn and destroy the plants. We use the slurry every 2 weeks. It is important to use other natural remedies against mold and rot along with the use of nettle slurry. It can be spraying with garden soap, yeast, or hydrogen peroxide. You can find the recipes for these sprays on my channel. This is important because nettle manure and spraying tend to cause fungal diseases like gray mold. This is especially important in late summer, when it is warm and humid, when fungal diseases begin to attack. During this period, it is best to give up fertilizing with nettle and fertilize with yeast ferment along with comfrey slurry, which will protect e.g. tomatoes or cucumbers against pathogen attack. Additionally, it will nourish the plant, stimulating it to produce plenty of fruit. If the disease has already occurred, do a yeast spray and spray the leaves as well as the soil. This should stop the fungus. We use these measures preferably in advance, preventively and regularly. This is the best method when using natural plant protection products. Nevertheless, it is worth using nettle slurry, as it significantly stimulates the growth of green mass, strengthens the green parts of the plant and protects against pests such as aphids, spider mites, white flies. Nitrogen fertilization is manifested in such a way that the plant is very large, grows into leaves rather than flowers, has a dark green color, the stem is thick and overgrown. In my experience, fertilizing only with nettle slurry is not enough to obtain abundant crops and good fruit and vegetables. For me, it is only a supplementary fertilizer for liquid manure from cow manure, comfrey, yeast, and lime fertilization, which occurs naturally in e.g. ash. Although the use of these natural products has been poorly researched by scientists and there is very little scientific evidence for the effects of using nettle slurries, for example, a study has been conducted on the effects of nettle slurry on potato yields in organic farming. The experimental study was conducted by Alfonso Garmendia, Maria Dolores Reagan, Almo Marc, Maria Ferriol, Jorge Royo and Hugo Merle from Instituto Agroforestal Mediterráneo, Universitat Politécnica de Valencia in Spain in 2018. The fertilization status of the soil was the same throughout the area. Although the content of natural organic matter was medium to high, the presence of high levels of carbonate indicated a slow release of nitrogen into the soil. Consequently, although the overall nitrogen content of the soil was low, it was gradually released. Strong alkaline reaction of the soil was obtained. The average pH was 8.6. Analyses of irrigation water showed a low mean content of nitrates. The salinity of the water was moderate and therefore suitable for irrigating well-drained soil. The analyses also showed a high content of carbonates and soluble potassium, and a low content of sodium. Significant differences in the abundance of potato crops using nettle slurry were observed only with the participation of abundant watering. ANOVA analysis showed no significant differences in yield without additional irrigation of the plantation. As a consequence, none of the nettle treatments resulted in a significant increase in tuber production after excluding the watering effect. What is more interesting, plants treated with half of the dose gave more kilograms of tuber than plants with the recommended dose of nettle manure. The influence of the liquid manure on the occurrence of pests was also investigated. Small amounts of pests have been observed in all types of treatments. Therefore, the low level of pest presence indicated that the lack of liquid manure watering significantly increased their appearance, which indicates effectiveness in pest control. Though a 1996 study by another scientist named Bosick showed otherwise. The scientist studied the effectiveness in combating aphids with the help of cold water and fermenting nettle suspensions. He found that they had very little or no effect on aphids such as H. pruni, C. ribes and A. spirophaga, and according to these studies, the presence of pests and diseases did not result in significant differences between treatments. Another nettle study suggests even more interesting conclusions. The chemical analyses carried out in this experiment showed overall a low nitrogen content in the nettle slurry compared to the green unfermented plant. This study was conducted by Sorensen and Thorup Christensen in 2011. They obtained 2.2% to 3.3% nitrogen from chopped solid green nettle fertilizer. Therefore, solid green nettle manure probably contains more nitrogen than liquid slurry, which has a nitrogen content of 0.032%. However, when examining the effects on vegetables such as cauliflower, kale, leek, and celery, much better yields are seen with green fertilizers with a low carbon-to-nitrogen ratio. It was also indicated that the nettle roots do not contain the most nitrogen of the whole plant. Rosnitskek-Schimmel conducted a study in 1985, coming to the conclusion that the most important nitrogen compounds in nettle are free amino acids, of which asparagine and arginine consist of as much as 80%. Ultimately, the research showed that the scientists received a slight increase in the growth of the potato plant, but this did not significantly affect its yield. Only the potato plant was tested, so the use of slurry as fertilizer in other horticultural crops was not finally assessed.